The Filipino culture is one of many customs and traditions found in the Asian continent, a mainland disconnected from the other parts of the world for much of its history. It comes to no surprise that the values and mores we practice are not unlike any other parts of the earth, and such a diverse collection of societies can bring forth a plethora of artistic works, more specifically, literary works. So, in the vein of academic research, we will present to you as best as we can the colorful world of Asian literature. Let's begin! Let us first discuss the literary works of China. According to Goldbat 2019, China has gone through an unceasing 3,000 years as an enlightened, well-recorded civilization with a culture that influences the majority of Asian countries, only comparable in influence to the Greco-Roman culture in the West is known for their visual treatment of their writing works, similar today to what we know as calligraphy, and also their philosophical, religious, and scientific themes. A type of literature that is honored in China to this day is poetry. The dense and short lines of writing, paired with the distinct designs of the works, make it quite a popular art form within and out of the country. Another popular genre of Chinese literature comes in the shape of novels. The most important novel in Chinese history would be The Dream of the Red Chamber, or Hong Lou Meng. Originally written in the 18th century by Cao Zan and later published in its complete version by Cheng Wei Wan and Gao Yi. The themes of Chinese mythology, philosophy, and tradition remain difficult to dissect in detail to this day. It spawned an English translation, film and opera adaptations, countless unofficial sequels, and even its own field of study dedicated to analyzing it called Redology. Whether one looks at the elegant images and writing styles of the classical poems or the subtle meanings of the Dream of the Red Chamber, Chinese literature remains one of the most unrivaled legacies of art and culture around the world.
Next up is the land of unity and diversity, known as India. The second most populated country in the world is best recognized as an array of different ethnic cultures. From the groups in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, you'll be hard pressed to find another country with as many contrasting traditions as India. The first recordings of literary works from India were said to be written in Sanskrit. Some of these works include the Hindu scriptures, known as the Veda and the Upanishads, erotic texts such as the Kama Sutra, and even the Indian epics and folk tales like the Mahabharata, Harata, Ramayana, and other collections of sacred literature that is labeled collectively as Puranas. The two Indian epics are considered to be the most important poems in Indian culture. As stated by Doniger, this enormous poem is about a war waged by the Kauravas against the exiled Pandava brothers. The actual plot rarely matters for people, as it takes up about a fifth of the entire text. Instead of the epic serve as the evolution of Hinduism in India, from the introduction of sectarian beliefs, Hindus' connection with Buddhism, and most importantly, preaching the words of the Dharma, or the code of conduct. We will now move on to the Ramayana, penned by another character in the story named Valmiki. It is the story of the god Rama and his quest to fight the demon king Ravana in his city of Lanka to save his wife Sita. It is still heralded as one of the great Indian epics along with Mahabharata, and the mere recital of his poem is considered a mark of excellence. Rama, along with the Pandava brothers, would be honored as mythological heroes and their effects are felt, even to the other genres of literature in India. Speaking of which, we haven't even mentioned the numerous other groups of languages with their own literary works. Tamil literature in South India, Prakrit literature that came out as an offshoot of the Buddhism-inspired Sanskrit, inspired literary works, and even English literature that is known to have more Western approach to Indian storytelling. The colorful background of its people, adding to the complicated style of the artistic work, gives the entirety of the Indian culture vibrant and earnest energy that's unlike any other.
Here we are now on the island of Japan, a relatively unique island chain for the fact that most of its life was spent in the isolation from the rest of the world And unlike the Chinese literature that declined and resurfaced over a period of culture of changes, Japanese literature never faded or westernized as a practice. Kin 2016 describes Japanese literature as favoring ambiguity and the particles of speech which leads to works that are cryptic and abstract. This is not to say that their literary works are free from it. Indeed, Japan is famous for its streets, a hindrance to fashion and refinement, much like the Chinese counterpart it was inspired from. It also branches away from Chinese culture even more by adapting themes and emotion and universal feelings instead of philosophy and tradition. The earliest known writings that still exist today are the Konkiki and the Nihon Shoki, two mythic texts that details the folk tales, legends, and tradition. Some of these tales are based on Chinese Buddhism and folk tales, but it mostly has its own material from their ethnic religion of Shinoto. Japan Guide 1997. Moving into the literary works themselves, the most popular genre in writing in Japan are poetry, novels, and drama. In the case of poetry, the first thing that comes into mind is the iconic haiku and taka forms. Haiku originate as the 70-syllable three-line poem with subject matters that describe the natural states of the certain place, while taka is a syllable five-line poem and tackles any subject like hardship, gratitude rather, and self-reflection. Taka Journal 2015. Reading a haiku or taka was said to inflict a sensation of passion and spirits. This, along with these visual art styles adapted from China, makes Japanese poems quite an interesting read. Some famous poets are the likes of Maotsu Basho, Masuka Shinki, Kobayashi Isa, and Yosha Buso, known as the greatest haiku master of Japan. In the topic of novels, the tale of Genji was made in the 11th century by Murasaki Shibuku of Heian period, a work that can be considered as the one of the first novel of human history. It draws similar qualities with Dream of the Red Chamber in the sense that it illustrates the lives of those people in Japan at the time. Instead of philosophy, a religion as the main theme, it tackles the human passion, desires, and the perceptive emotion that Japanese literature is known for. However, other important works generally sprouted from the 20th century. One example is Haruki Murakami and his gritty and edgy novel Almost Transparent Blue. Another is Haruki Murakami, obviously known for his book Shiharu-san and Kafka. On the Floor. As stated previously, the common themes of human emotion what makes Japanese literature timeless. Their works transcended cultural barriers and instead focus on elements anyone can relate to, provided you can tolerate the more often than not discrete subject matters. With its deep and reflective styles of writing, the thoughtful and brilliant nature of its storytelling, and the ambiguous theme it tackles, Japanese literature is quite of the heartfelt and thought-provoking experience that sometimes not even English literature can match.
We went through China, India, and Japan, and now we arrive here in the Philippines. According to WordPress 2018, literature in the Philippines withstood time and different periods and has evolved through generations. For every period that passed, different genres appeared, and these literary works rooted from all regions reflecting their culture, society, and lifestyle. The early works of oral literature such as the epics, legends, folk tales, songs, and other forms of creative writing by the ethnic groups are classified under the pre-colonial period, with every different region having its own sets of beliefs and influenced by the cultures nearby them. When the Spanish occupied most of the archipelago, beliefs and practices were either lost in time or retold to fit the culture of Spain. Notable writers of this time were Francisco Balagtas and his work Florante at Laura, and Jose de la Cruz with Ibong Adarna. Both of these works are considered one of the best of Philippine literature, despite bearing the influence of European folk tales and mythology, as an obvious sign of our initial culture's decline. Still, the Spanish literary practices such as the corrido, awit, sinaculo, zarzuela, and others did help the Filipino culture evolve out of tribal traditions. The country has gone through an odyssey of identity changes, cultural uprisings, and world-spanning influences, but one fact that has always persisted is that the Philippine art of literature will always display the best works one can ever find.